This is a quick demonstration on how to make a watercolor pumpkin using water-based markers. I have a Skillshare class where I paint pumpkins using actual watercolor paints. The link is below. First, you start with the base orange and draw the pumpkin. I just drew my pumpkin with the marker, but if you need to do a pencil guideline, go ahead and do that first. Outline the edges. And then you're going to lay down marker on the side that we're considering as the dark side, or the shadow side. Doesn't need to be exact. This is just your pigment pool you'll be painting from. This video is at twice the speed I painted it, so if you want to paint along with me, just pause it for each step. Next, I'm going to add the stem with a base brown. I just draw the bottom of a triangle for the stem. Now I'm going to draw a ground for it to sit on. I just make sure my lines line up on the edges. Just fill in a little bit under the pumpkin. Next, take a yellow. This is going to be your highlight color. So it's just going to go on the top and then on the one side where we're assuming our light's coming in from. Now grab some waterless paint. When you paint between the yellow and the dark side of the other pumpkin ridge, try and keep a little bit of white in there so the colors don't bleed together too dramatically. You can go back and smooth in some of the blends, but keep doing this all the way around. Bringing the orange to the yellow, leave a little bit of white until you get your next ridge. I also make sure that I paint over the edge of the pumpkin just a little to make sure it has that watercolor effect instead of a marker look. Okay, now for the base. It bleeds up a little, that's fine. That kind of gives it a little bit of a shadow down there at the base of the pumpkin. I'm just taking this pigment and pulling it down, fading it towards the front, and then dip into the brown and go up on your shadow side just a little bit. This adds just a little bit more shadow and depth without being overdone in the pumpkin. Now the stem, use just a little bit of water in the stem. If not, it'll all bleed together and you won't have two different pieces of the stem. It'll be one big blob. And there you have a quick watercolor pumpkin using water-based markers. You can do this with any color marker. Actually, it's a little bit easier. I'm going to do it with a teal blue. I live at the beach, and teal pumpkins are very, very popular down here. So I'm going to do the same technique where I put the base blue down on what's considered the dark or the shadow side, except I'm not going to use another color for a highlight. Now you can use a lighter blue, you can use a little yellow, but if you do that, it's going to be a little bit greenish, so that's why I skipped it. I chose a lighter brown that's more like sand color, using the same thing for the stem. And then you paint it the same way. Pull in your pigment, paint over your edges, and bring it towards the edge. Definitely be sure to leave that white gap in there, though, so that it doesn't bleed together. And leave it just a little bit wider than you think you need, because you'll want to go over the edge of the shadow side of the ridge. So it ends up dipping into that space a little. Then you can go back and fill it in so there's not big white spaces. But it's always easier to go back when the pigment's dried just a little bit than to kind of do it all at once and end up with a big bleed and losing the shape of your darks and lights. And we do the base the same way. You can see a little bit of blue on my brush, that's okay. Often when you have shadows, it reflects a little bit of the color in there anyway. Now you can see I am losing a little bit of the shape of the pumpkin there on the right. We'll fix that in just a minute, don't worry. Do the stem carefully, not too much water, or you end up with one big brown blob. Now if you lose the edge like I did here on the right, just grab your markers and add just a little bit of a line. You can't do it too much because it'll stop drawing, but you can add in a little bit. And so I added in a little bit of blue, a little bit of the brown, bring that edge back that I lost in the paint. And then I'm going to smooth it out just a little bit with just a smidge of water on the brush. Make it kind of a dry brush. Just a little bit of touch up, smoothing out some of the edges. And there you have it in blue. Again, if you'd like to know how to do this in watercolor with a lot more detail, check out the link to my Skillshare class below.